Did the algorithm recently recommend to you a trailer for a show called Hello Tomorrow that came out 3 years ago? Because if so, you're not the only one. And while the show has nothing to do with Fallout directly, you also wouldn't be the first one to notice some parallels. Of course, there's gonna be people that are like, it's called Retro Future, but this show looks like it takes place in pre-war Fallout. I'm just dying to swap out all these robots with Protectrons. So I watched it, and I gotta say, not only did I like it, I may have loved it, but before I go any deeper, I want to qualify that this is what I would consider to be a spoiler-free video, but I'm learning some people have a different threshold for what's considered a spoiler, so let me be specific. Expect to see some out-of-context stills, maybe to communicate mood or tone or vibe or character relationships, at least at the beginning of the series before anything changes, but I'm not going to be talking about any plot points or events that happen on the show whatsoever, except for one that is established in the first episode and I think is pretty clear in the trailer, but maybe not explicitly stated, but there'll be like a countdown on the screen to warn you when I'm gonna drop that. I really just can't talk about the themes without talking about this one thing. You still with me? Let's do this. So when Atlas sent me the trailer for this show, I was like, who let me down? How did I not know that this show exists? Why did I not know that this show exists? So I looked up the Wikipedia and saw that it has pretty weak reviews. 54% approval rating based on 52 reviews. Average rating of 6.1 out of 10. Not great. The Rotten Tomatoes consensus says, Hello Tomorrow is visually striking enough to periodically distract from its rambling story and thinly sketched characters, but overall, this first season fails to live up to its potential. Did this stop me from watching it? Of course not. I am very predictable. I will watch anything that looks like this. I can't imagine what would stop me. It would have to be like a homophobic, ableist train wreck starring P. Diddy and Kevin Spacey, with cameos from Marilyn Manson and Chris Brown. But short of that, I'm watching it. Watched it more than once. This could be a classic case of art is subjective, and maybe a lot of people didn't like it, but I really did, and maybe you might too. And props to Atlas. Basically, I was just airing out my thoughts about this show in our Discord conversation, and he was like, that's a video, and here we are. As far as Apple TV shows are concerned, it didn't rock my world like Severance and Silo did, but I think it's a good watch, and I think that I particularly resonated with the themes and the things that the show is trying to discuss. And that might be why I got something out of it that maybe all these people didn't. It clearly wasn't promoted very well if people are finding out about it 3 years later. And it strikes me as criminal that Fallout fans didn't know about it. We may have been the target market for this, but since we're a video game fandom, maybe they just didn't think of that, or maybe they just wanted to see what shows would take off without them having to put any money into marketing. The show might also be a better binge than weekly. So the show takes place in a retro-futuristic world that's very similar to Fallout in the sense that you have some technology that's clearly futuristic. We've got rockets going to space, we have robot assistants, but then we also clearly don't have the internet. It's still a very retro media landscape where it's a lot easier to lie about things and to localize things because people can't just get online and see what's going on everywhere else in the world, which is the setting that would be necessary for our main character, salesman Jack Billings, to get away with what he's doing. So he works for this company called Brightside, and they're selling timeshares or real estate on the moon. And in this universe, people see space travel, they see rockets, so the idea that there could be real estate available on the moon isn't wildly ridiculous. It seems totally feasible. It's like if somebody in our world was like selling timeshares on an island. And we follow his sales team and what their different motivations are for working for this company, how they feel about real estate on the moon, or possibly going to the moon themselves. And it's hard to look at these salesmen in the trailer and not immediately think about Vault-Tec salesmen. Even the kind of sales points and the things that they discuss kind of feel like the kind of stuff a Vault-Tec salesman might say. There's a lot of emphasis on preparing for the future, looking toward the future, creating a future for your family, for your loved ones. I mean, that's why the show is called Hello Tomorrow. And similar to the title Fallout, Fallout is also a word for consequences. And the title Hello Tomorrow also suggests this idea of encountering the consequences of your choices. No more putting things off until tomorrow. Tomorrow is now here. Hello Tomorrow. And that is exactly what's happening to our friend Jack. Because there is no real estate on the moon, and this whole thing is made up. It's a scam. The scam sort of unfurls something like a Ponzi scheme. So a Ponzi scheme is when you hustle investors for a bogus business, and then you pay back those investors by getting more investors. And then it just kind of goes on and on, where you pay the first group with people later, and then it just keeps going down and down and down the chain. But the people at the bottom are never going to get paid back, and so you could basically procrastinate forever. You just get new investors, then just get new investors, and then just get new investors, and then just keep on going down. You may have heard of Bernie Madoff. He is very famous for this, or infamous. The scam in Hello Tomorrow reminded me actually a lot of, you might remember, the Fire Festival. The Fire Festival was an imaginary, fraudulent festival disorganized in 2017. This guy was selling this luxury festival experience, tickets, investor stakes, sponsorship opportunities, vendor deals, but then all the money that came in ended up just going into, like, putting out fires. See what I did there? I remember watching a couple documentaries about this and being like, how did this guy think this was gonna end? And Jack on Hello Tomorrow raises really similar questions, like, what is he gonna do? Especially because he has these salesmen that are working for him, that with lives and families, and this guy, like, what's he doing? It took me a really long time to understand this as an autistic person who, like, it's not that autistic people never lie, we just find it, like, really cognitively challenging. Like, it just seems like a lot of work. It seems really paranoid to think that somebody could lie like this. And so it took me a long time to realize that there are some people who are just as averse to the truth as I am to lies. And even if they aren't doing some crazy Bernie Madoff Fire Festival scheme, they still operate through their whole lives by future faking. And that's what I think this show is about, is future faking. Future faking is a manipulation tactic where somebody gets you to stay connected to them by going, oh, in the future, we're gonna do this. In the future, we're gonna move here or live here. And this thing that you long for, if you stick with me, you're gonna get that thing you've always wanted. These people don't love or like or trust themselves enough to just offer who they presently are. They don't think anyone will stick with them unless they make some sort of promise. And just like a Ponzi scheme, they always have some reason why it has to be pushed further and further out. Like on this show, there's always some excuse that the moon launch can't quite happen yet. And then the operation at some point can sort of be fueled on some cost fallacy. If you've already invested so much, and your ego doesn't want you to believe that you have been conned, sure, you'll hang on another month. You'll hang on another couple months. What's another? I've already been waiting 6 months. What's 1 month more? And while Jack most certainly is stressed the hell out about what he's gotten these people roped into, he still believes that he's doing a good thing. He in the show sort of asked the question, are we better off with a dream even if the dream is a lie? I brought up a similar point when I was talking about Mr. House and the Strip in Fallout New Vegas. And yeah, the American dream, the idea that we're all on this level playing field and if you work hard enough then you can have all the money in the world is bullshit. The game was rigged from the start. There are bigger, badder forces than us pulling strings on the whole damn thing. But for the people who believe the fantasy, people privileged enough not to be disillusioned by it, they are happier and healthier for it. Belief is powerful, and people say, I'll believe it when I see it. But everything that has ever been created by a human being was believed in before it was seen. It would be better if we believed in each other, but until then, House at least offers something to believe in. Just like in, let's face it, capitalism, it's not really up to us whether or not we strike it rich on the Strip. Even if the game is rigged, are the people who live on the Strip better off playing around in this rigged game than being out in the wasteland? That's what Jack kind of feels like he's doing. He feels like he's protecting people from the wasteland. Because Jack feels like the world is a wasteland, and that the joy of a false dream is really the only joy to be had.
What is life without a dream to make it go down easy?
Funky Death Claw reminding you to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe! I had a long-term friendship with somebody who similarly had this kind of a dream thing that supposedly we were all pointing our futures to. And years into it, it did become pretty clear, like, is this person putting any concrete plans into this thing that we're supposedly doing? And there really weren't any. And I'm like, this is a pretty big goal. Like, it's one thing when we were, like, in high school talking about it, but, you know, when we were in our 30s, it's like, how are we doing this. And I was kind of suspicious, but this person just seemed so confident. And they also just seemed like they wanted this so badly that regardless of anybody else involved, I really believed that they were going to figure out how to do this, if for no other reason, for themselves, because this is the only future that they seem to be able to envision for themselves. There was this feeling, because I didn't really know what I was going to do in the future, that if I stayed in orbit around this person, that I would follow them to this, this destiny. And I think that's how the salesmen on the show feel about Jack. The thought never really crossed my mind that it could be a fabrication just to keep people close to them. Because if Jack isn't going to the moon, then what is he gonna do? And the truth is, Jack's not entirely sure. He's procrastinating. He's kind of future faking himself. He's just like, I hope I figure it out eventually. And that has to be what the Fire Festival guy was thinking too, that he could just keep extracting money from people and then eventually he would come up with a solution. Meanwhile, my autistic ass is like, what? I don't even start things until I'm already imagining how they're gonna end. What an anxiety nightmare. What a way to live. I don't get it. But even beyond the scam, in one way or another, everyone on this show is selling themselves on a future that will supposedly justify the present. Like somebody working a job going, well, if I stick it out, I'm gonna get retirement. I don't know what companies still do that in 2026, but if you're in one, I probably wouldn't leave either. But everybody's misery can just get pushed out a little bit at a time, further and further, with every false promise, every delayed launch. And while all the customers are fantasizing about this future on the moon, Jack is fantasizing about this future where he somehow gets out of this. Everyone is postponing reality. And that's one of the things I loved so much about the show is what a great metaphor for a pie-in-the-sky fantasy of the future, for it to literally be shooting for the moon. This is another reason why I think that Fallout fans would have been an appropriate market, because we love super direct on-the-nose metaphors. I know I do. While the show definitely isn't dark the way that Fallout is, there is something that happens in the first episode that is very dark and feels very Fallout, because it's dark with sort of a smile on its face. You'll know it when you see it. And there is something sort of inherently dark about sympathizing with a character like Jack. Jack is sort of like what Benny would have been like if he were in an environment where being charming was more rewarding than being aggressive. While I'm sitting here and possibly you are sitting here I could never promise somebody this fake fantasy because obviously reality's going to be around the corner. I don't think that people like Jack and possibly Benny and my friend that I was talking about experience fantasy as being different from reality in the way that maybe you and I do. If people believe it, then it's real. What people believe is more real than reality.
What is life without a dream to make it go down easy?
This friend also had a tendency to be if they hurt somebody, if they could convince other people that they didn't hurt this person, then they didn't. I think you're going to see that in a lot of narcissists, Controlling public opinion about an event is more important than the events themselves. Chances are, if you or I, because I'm just going to assume that you have morals also, if you accidentally hit somebody or hit an animal with your car, you would feel bad about doing that, even if nobody believed that you did it for whatever reason. You would know that you did it and you would feel bad, right? I would. But these people are well, if nobody believes that I did it, then oh, thank God that I didn't do it. Then I don't have to feel any bad feelings. And I don't think that that makes these people evil. I think that these people think this way because of what they were taught, what their circumstances, and that it does not make them absolved. I think as a society, as a civilization, we all have partial responsibility in creating a world where perception isn't reality, because, I've been saying this for years, expecting perfection out of people doesn't create perfection, it creates liars. Maybe these people have a point when they say perception is reality. Maybe we've shown them a world where beautiful lies always beat the ugly truth.
I was shocked too, sir. But look at the world. Who gets anywhere by playing straight?
If believing in a particular future changes what people spend their money on, changes who they trust, changes who they marry, where they move, what they dedicate their lives to, then the so-called fantasy has material consequences. It becomes real, just a different kind of real. Now, I don't think that the show is justifying what Jack is doing by pointing this out. I think it's showing us why what Jack is doing is working. Why the fantasy is so appealing. that future faking does do something real for us. The show comes back to this in multiple ways. Jack doesn't feel like he's exploiting people. He really feels like he's giving them the best they can hope for. Because from his perspective, the real world is empty. He's a sad, sad guy. He is just as uncomfortable with the truth as I am with lying. And because his reality is completely submerged with this evidence that perception is reality, that the fantasy and the dream does shape material reality in a valid way, he doesn't feel like he's selling people a deception. He doesn't feel like this is a scam. He thinks that he's declaring what reality gets to be. And he seems to think there's something really beautiful and really important about that. As if reality is a disease and he has the cure. And I ended the show thinking about how future faking is everywhere. I'm a millennial, so I was pressured pretty intensely to get a college degree because I was going to have a career and everything was going to work out for me if I just followed the path that they told me would have this destination. And then when the destination never came, I'm still recovering from the anger of that because I would have made different choices. But they sure did keep me busy with that shit, didn't they? A beautiful thing about being a human being, a gift, is our ability to envision the future, to long-term plan, to recognize I'm willing to put myself through this discomfort now for a payoff later. But we all have to be hyper-vigilant, and we have to really think about it and really look at the facts and really look at the world as we believe it to be and not based on how it is sold to us in order to decide what we're going to invest in with our money, with our time, with our energy, because that is a gift that our minds can do that. And it's a gift that we should use, but it is a gift that can be exploited. Hello Tomorrow is about the promises we use to make today's reality bearable and what those promises cost us if that tomorrow never arrives. And speaking as a diligent, obedient, hardworking millennial with $125,000 in student debt that I may never live to pay, that theme resonated with me a whole heck of a lot. So let's get real for a bit. What didn't I like about that show? And I can't really think of that many things. I do want to warn you that it ends on a cliffhanger. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So if you watch it and you get invested the way that I did, prepare to live in perpetual anxiety at the end of it, because wow. Is there a novelization? Did anybody finish this story? Because I think I need to know what happened. And the other thing, I guess this is maybe something that they were touching on in that review thing when they said, like, what was the wording that they used? I don't get what they were talking about with rambling story. I didn't find the story rambling whatsoever. But the thinly sketched characters, I think it should have been funnier. There was something very comical about this world, and the characters weren't very comical to match it. And I think there's also an element of, you can only meet somebody at the depths that they have met themselves, and I think similarly, if you aren't a very deep person, that you're not going to recognize depth. We see that all the time with people complaining about the Fallout TV show. And I think in particular the characters Shirley and Myrtle, if you find those characters in particular thinly sketched, if you find Jack thinly sketched, then meet the show with more depth and you'll find it. And this is far from the first time that I've seen a great show on Apple TV that did not get nearly enough press. Another show, Central Park, is probably one of my favorite shows of all time. And it's from the creators of Bob's Burgers. I would think it would be a huge hit, but nobody's heard of it. So if you have Apple TV, I think you should give it a chance. And you should have Apple TV because you do know that Silo Season 3 is out, right? I would think that this audience would be watching that. Then you should check this show out too. And Central Park. And the Big Door Prize, which also, I guess, ends on a cliffhanger, so you should be warned. But I loved that show. But isn't it a book? Maybe I can find out how it ends if I actually read books, ever. Alright, that's it. That's my not Fallout video. Hello Tomorrow. Much recommend. I loved it. Community section for the Feral Cools. So I used to do videos every week, and then I switched to every other week, and now we're basically doing the first week of the month, and I'm only going to be streaming the Saturday after the video that I do the first week of the month. When I made that decision, I got so sad. I actually had like a little bout of depression because I love doing this so much, and I really wanted to keep doing it every week, but I just can't afford it. I'm an adult. I can't do whatever I want all the time. So obviously, since this was a video week, come hang out for the stream on Saturday. I'd love to see you. But now that the stream is once a month, I'm gonna have to sort of accept that I'm gonna lose people, and that's sad. But we'll still have a nice time. While we probably shouldn't spend too much time talking about the show because we don't want to spoil it, it might be kind of a fun discussion to talk about other shows that are kind of Fallout fandom adjacent. Like, if you like Fallout, you'll probably like this too. Maybe make a fun watch list. So yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll see you on Saturday. Until then, stay cool, Ferals.